Great to be here. Since that point when Mark and I met in Geneva, well, I was giving talks then to sort of rather smaller groups of people that would fit on this little piece of the stage. I was trying to persuade them that the World Wide Web would be a good idea and it wouldn't be too complicated and they wouldn't get lost in it. Yeah, yes, we've come a long way. And there's been a lot of innovation that out there on this web platform, because it's an open platform, because it's a royalty-free platform, because there's no barrier to entry if you're a developer and you've got a good idea. There has been a huge amount built on top of it. In fact, I left Geneva to go to MIT because MIT offered to host the World Wide Web Consortium in 1994. And so the World Wide Web Consortium is a bunch of crazy people, excited people, passionate people, and companies. And among them, Nokia, which is, and I'm glad to say that Nokia has a great history together of working with all the other companies in the World Wide Web Consortium to further this web technology. In particular, Art Barstow is our representative. I don't know if you're there. Aura Lassalam, my good buddy, we've done many things together. Some of the people in Nokia I've come across through that connection. So things are constantly changing. Sometimes they're driven by the hardware, sometimes they're driven by ideas, sometimes they're driven by the fact that processes go faster, sometimes they're driven by need, sometimes they're driven because we just realize that something is very important to do for society. To take an example, a cell phone manufacturer produces devices which have location awareness in them. That itself is not enough to actually make things happen. What has to happen is, yes, the phone is aware of it, but when you're looking at a website, when you're looking at a web application, then the web application's got to be able to be aware of that. So you go to W3C, to the World Wide Web Consortium, you meet with other people, you define the interfaces between the phone and the web application, so that a web application can operate, even though it's a web page, it's an application. The web application is kind of both. It can operate as though it's a phone app, but also with access to the same source of information, with the same power of display and interaction. But of course, because it's a web application, it'll work on all kinds of different devices. We have the Mobile Web Initiative, which has produced guidelines about how you make those web applications. I understand that some of you are executives and some of you are developers, and probably there's a bunch of executive developers out there. So for the developers, I'd encourage you to make web apps, make them so that they take care to work so that they will work with all kinds of different devices now. If you do that now, also, it's a hope for the future, because when you make something that works with all the different devices you see now, the idea is that also it'll work with the future devices that you can only imagine about now. So location awareness is one thing, obviously, but it's the tip of the iceberg. The thing you carry with you knows more and more about you. It knows, it has your address book, but it also knows physically where you are, not only roughly where you are, but it knows whether you're having a bumpy ride. It knows which way up you are, maybe, if it's attached to you. So it can learn more and more about you. It may be able, in the future, be able to detect more and more medical information. It'll know whether you're excited or not, whether your heart rate has gone up. So the integration of these things is really important. So location awareness is just one of the many specifications which are coming through W3C. One of the other areas, I could talk here for hours about all the things which are going on. But one of the things which I've personally been very invested in recently, over the last year or two, has been putting data on the web. I basically started 2009, I decided that we have plenty of documents on the web. It's time to get the data on the web. We've had technology for putting data on the web, but there's too much data, which is, when you get to it on the web, if you really want to process it, if you want to put it in a spreadsheet, it's very frustrating, because when you get to that report, maybe you can see the chart, but you can't see the data behind it. You can't get the spreadsheet file. You can't download it. You can't download the calendar. You can look at an image of it. There's some data out there from government departments, for example, where They put the data on the web. They had very carefully taken a copy of the report, of the appendix of the report with a table, and they'd scanned it and published the scan as a PDF. So anybody who actually wanted to use that data would have to retype it. So that was the state of affairs at the beginning of 2009, and then I got the opportunity to give a talk at TED about putting data on the web in February. In April, Gordon Brown asked over lunch one day what the UK should do to make the best use of the internet. I told him, you should put all your government data on the web. He said, okay, we will, which was a pretty good response, you know, for somebody who's been spending all these years persuading people to do things. It's kind of nice to get okay back, and almost disarming. So that led to a 6-month, well, now a continuing project in the UK to go and put data on the web. And a burst of government data, you can go to data.gov.uk, and what has been wonderful has been to see the competition between data.gov.uk and data.gov, the US version of that, to see who can get the best data, who can get the most interesting data out there onto the web. So that's the burst of data, but that's only, UK government data is only from the government sector. There's also scientific data, there's all kinds of data out there. There's data from, open maps. Mark was just talking about open maps. I'm a fan of OpenStreetMap. That's a mass of open data. And this data is great when you connect it together, when you realize that the data, this data about Helsinki is about, when this data says Helsinki, it's the same Helsinki. When you connect that, then suddenly you can pick up then all kinds of interesting information. When you're looking for one thing, when you're analyzing one thing, you can realize that you can find out how it's connected to something else. So how is this relevant to mobile? Very. Because the exciting things, when you think of the exciting things that you're running on your mobile device, these are generally data-backed, the ones I use. You know, they're my calendar. Actually, my calendar is the merging of a lot of data streams. It's the filtering and the presentation and the art of getting things that I have to do in one day onto a thing that size is pretty, that isn't really a challenge for a developer. And that's just event information. I use it for all kinds of things like flights I'm going to take, live data about whether the flight I'm going to take is going to be delayed. So I use it for, in fact, as you think about all the things, you make it an app which deals with your favorite sport or soccer sites or something. And all these apps obviously flourish on a good bed of open data. And in fact, they flourish if they're built to use data interfaces. They generally are built with APIs. So the standardization of those APIs. And in fact, if you're writing an application and you're using remote data, then one of the things you could do is you can put all that data into the linked data standards like RDF, and you can use the Sparkle is a common API. Automatically, the moment that data has been turned into linked data, then you can use Sparkle as a remote protocol for accessing it. So data is really important, and when you, in a way, we're turning into this, from a sort of a single bus system into a double bus system, whereas the web, if you like, everything, all the servers connect, and all the clients connect, and the conventional web you think of. When you look at these data-driven applications, then you have web applications are on the web, but they themselves are pulling data from a web of data. And the health of these things obviously mutually reinforce each other. The better apps you have, then the more incentive there is for somebody to put data on the web. If I make an app which will compare, for example, different types of tire, then suddenly, to be visible as a tire manufacturer, you have to have data about your tires out there on the web in the standard format. So data on the web is one of the things which I've been really excited about. It's one of the things which is driving lots and lots of development, not just apps and mobile phones, obviously, but also the great thing about data is you can use it on the really big screen. If I had some scientific data to show you, maybe we were a cancer research conference, and I want to show you a whole lot of genetics results, and I want to show you some biopathways results, and I want to use all these screens, instead of just having a picture of me, then wouldn't it be neat if I could actually pull all that data up and use them with millions of pixels? So the great thing about data is that you can reuse it on different size things, on something the size of a watch, or something very big. If you take the world of data out there, and you then connect it to the idea of location awareness, what happens when spatial meets this semantic web of data, this web of linked data? Well, one of the things is that wherever you go with your device, you can pull up information about local things, points of interest. There's a points of interest effort starting W3C now to standardize that, because it's going to be such a valuable thing on any device to be able to just hold it up and say, you know, what is this place anyway, and to get information about the Excel Center. So that is augmented reality. This is very exciting. It's, if you like, it's sort of like 3D games backwards. It's where the 3D version of the thing that you see on your phone is actually mirroring reality, but it's mirroring reality with a connection. And the really important thing, I think, for that is that data is that you don't just get the data which is on a map. You don't get just that. You know, a map may say that this is a church with a spire on a typical British map. It'll distinguish between churches with spires and churches with towers, so that you can use them as landmarks. Other people might distinguish churches Christian, churches Catholic. But in fact, of course, there's data about, the church has got data about when they have church services, who's in charge, what the committees are, what you have to bring to a potluck. There's all kinds of information about the church. If you're doing research about churches, you may want to look at the spread of different religions. So if you could take that map data and burrow down to it, if when you're looking with your mobile device at a church, you can actually say, okay, I want to go through from the fact that I'm looking at it to find out whether there's a service on today, to find out what history is, for example, then that's a huge benefit, and it's a very nice way for the user to get into data. So these are some of the things, the many things that are happening out there. Of course, you've also heard that HTML, I guess, must be just the most popular format for anything anywhere. Which 20 years ago I was amazed to find out that so much got translated into HTML. But now, so much of HTML, W3C is working on HTML5. So if you do check that out, one of the nice things about HTML5, there are all sorts of technical nice things, like it's easier to put in video. Also, at the same time as HTML is advancing a level, getting some new features, scalable vector graphics, which has been developed for several years. It was developed several years ago, but it wasn't adopted by all of the browsers. In fact, so scalable vector graphics allows you to have line drawings and more sophisticated graphics on your website rather than the text, which HTML is based on. And it's scalable, so it can work on a really big screen and work on a phone really optimally. So it's great stuff. It's been around for a bit. It wasn't adopted by all the browser manufacturers. One rather prominent browser manufacturer had for some reason avoided implementing it. Good news is now they all do. So for the new browsers coming out, you can make a page which is you'll be able to make a page which is mixed HTML5 and scalable vector graphics. You'll be able to animate that, so you'll be able to have put your video inside an ellipsoid, have it spinning around, do all kinds of very nifty things. So a very powerful thing, and of course all driven by the JavaScript engine inside, so the whole thing is programmable. So very, very passive. So it's good, very, very powerful engine.